we move on to our first keynote speaker for this morning. He's a speaker by passion and entrepreneur by trade. He flies all around the planet to witness what the technological revolution actually means for the future of youth, businesses, work, cultures, and societies. He looks at the geopolitics of disruption. With this new reality, he architects innovation and marketing strategies for experiential journeys shaped around a new, augmented, nomadic, and tribal human.
As a sought-after futurist keynote speaker, he inspires audiences across 5 continents at major events and at Fortune 500 companies' private gatherings. He has shared stages with leaders like President Barack Obama, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, and many others. Renowned for his chairmanship skills, he occasionally MCs extraordinary events worldwide.
Truly tremendous credentials. He has been an entrepreneur for the past 20 years, active in numerous startup ecosystems worldwide. He advises and invests in era-defining companies. He's the creator of multiple shows such as the critically acclaimed Layovers, a show on air travel innovation, and Notion Capital, which talks about the future of the enterprise. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to provide us with more information about the automation acceleration, how machines are transforming emerging markets, let's all please welcome here to the Philippines, the founder of the global innovation scouting firm Intelligencer. Please welcome Mr. Paul Papadimitriou. A round of applause, please.
He didn't train to say my last name because Papadimitriou, he never came to me asking how do I say my last name. It's obviously Greek. I'll come to that in a minute. Hello? Hello? How's everyone today? Vive la France! Right? No? I was supporting Croatia. What can I do? Yeah. I speak French because I was born next door, Geneva. You know, so as a Swiss, we kind of like the French, but they're too big, so I like to support the underdog. And come on, that's why I work with startups. I like to support the underdog. So all of you should have supported, the corporate should have supported France, the startups you should have supported Croatia. Anyway, let's start, because I don't have more than 30 minutes, and I'm always late when I speak, because as a Greek, I'm always late, obviously, but I'm not bankrupt. Not yet, at least. The good thing, you know, because as a Greek, I can be bankrupt because I dodge my taxes. But as a Swiss, because I was born in Switzerland, I can hide the money in the bank. I have the perfect combination of facts. Did I lose the microphone? No, not yet. I don't have to move too much, apparently. So I'm not going to move too much. And my third passport, because I have a third passport, is from Finland. And everybody knows that who lives in Finland? Santa Claus. So with the money I dodged in Greece that I put in a Swiss bank, well, I'm financing Christmas. So you can thank me for Christmas. I was in Seoul during the Olympics, during the latest Winter Olympics. That was in the airport, in Incheon Airport. If you've never seen it, it's one of the best airports in the world. And these guys, these were robots actually that were, one was cleaning the airport, and the other one, if you were lost in the airport, you could actually tell me if I'm losing my voice, I can speak very loudly because I can see these guys are freaking out. The other one was actually, you could simply talk to the robot and it would lead you to your stuff. I'm like, wow, holy shit, we're living in science fiction already. This world is already in science fiction. My last name is Papadimitriou. Forget about it because it's impossible to pronounce. The only good thing that's very good is for Google SEO because I'm always on the top of the results. Every time I'm in a play, people are saying, what? Just call me Paul, guys, okay? So when you meet me later, call me Paul. I won't have enough business cards because I always forget them, and obviously I forgot them in London. So just call me Paul. If you want to find me online, it's, again, my last name, @Papadimitriou, pretty much everywhere from Snapchat to Facebook. So what do? I work with myth and tools. What, do you want me to, okay, do you want to cut this one and put me this? Oh, wow. Okay, now I have a radio voice. So I work with myth and tools. What is that? There's two things that I believe as human beings we do very well. First is we tell stories. The reason you're Filipino, the reason I'm Greek or Swiss or Finn or English. You can see I'm very confused. I have too many passwords. The reason is because we gather around. Here we're at Ignite, we gather around and we have like-minded people around you and we create stories. That's the first thing we do very well as human beings. That's how we create nations. That's how we create businesses. That's how we create startups. That's how we create the world. The second thing that we do very well as human beings is tools. We create tools. We create a lot of tools around us to make our lives better. These are the two things that I'm going to talk about today. So the tools first. You cannot not open a newspaper, not watch anything on TV without anyone talking about technology. That's where we are today. Here we are. Technology, 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 technology. Everybody wants to talk about technology. If you look at these charts, there's no test. You don't have to actually read the numbers. Technology has been with us, or around us all the time. From the stone, from the newspaper, the printing machine, everything is already being technology. Technology is not something new. If I look at the past 70 years, every 15 years has been a paradigm shift. We've shifted era-defining technologies. We went from mainframe computers. Mainframe computers is basically the size of this room with the power that you have in your pocket. And every 15 years, we actually had more power and actually had smaller devices. And we're entering now this era of mobile technology. We've been entering probably the past 5 to 10 years, depending. I remember I was going to, when my first startup was in 95, my second startup was in 98, we were going to what is now known as Mobile World Congress, the largest mobile conference in the world. And everybody, every year we were saying, this is the year of mobile. Yeah, well, no, this is your year of mobile. We don't say that anymore. 7 billion devices probably around the world. But you know what? This era is already gone. Now we're entering a new era called, I call it the everywhere, nowhere. In this room alone, I can count at least 5,000 devices that are activated. I'm not talking about your phones, because I know the Filipinos, you have more phones than people in this country. But the Greeks were the same, actually. We have God knows how many phones. So that's something that we can relate. By the way, so you have some context, I used to live in the Philippines. 9 years ago, I was living in Rockwell next door. I also lived in Japan before that. I've moved a lot around, so I know a little bit this country. I've invested in startups back then as well here in the Philippines, but I'll come to that a bit later. Everywhere, nowhere. It means that there is technology is all around us, and we should stop actually thinking about it. Obviously, the funny slide here is just to show that all these things, because you know I'm old enough to remember to have all these things. I was so happy when my dad offered me a Walkman in 1985. I was 10 years old. All this is actually within our pocket, which is another way to see how technology goes super, super, super fast. Another way to see how technology goes fast, you probably cannot read it because it's too dark for you, is to see how fast the technology got adopted, right? So if you look at the US, how fast the technology got adopted, for instance, we can take, let's take the telephone, the one with the wire, guys. That took around 70 years to get adopted by 25% of Americans. It took a long time. It took, for instance, the smartphone only 4 years. Again, the technology goes faster. If I take the same kind of numbers in the world, again, the same idea, but this time, how fast did the technology reach 100 million users? So if I can take the same example again, the phone, it took 75 years for the phone, again, the one with a wire, to actually reach 100 million users. What do you think took a single year to reach 100 million users? I'm going to give you a hint if you can see it on the screen. It's a game. Yeah, I've heard it 5 times. Candy Crush, exactly. That again, I mean, you play Candy Crush, you're probably still playing now. That's why they make us shitloads of money. That again, the speed of adopting technology, of the technology adoption, is what actually matters. We've put software absolutely everywhere now. I invest in many companies that actually put, and I don't always understand. Look, the Internet of Things, I just got an IPO. These guys were putting like chips on light bulbs, and it was like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. And I invested, well, I just made a lot of money because we are putting software in every single thing possible around us, which is, again, why I could count more than 5,000 devices activated in this room alone. We're activating every atom, every bit. Everything that was dormant or not smart actually is becoming smart. This is why we see stuff like Skype. This is why we saw stuff like Airbnb. This is why we saw stuff like WhatsApp, because all these technologies are adopting super fast. For me, WhatsApp is the perfect example. You know WhatsApp. I know you guys use a lot Viber in this country as well. But WhatsApp, the great thing is I was working with telcos companies. In my first startup, we were working with Nokia and other companies. Nokia, you don't even know what that is if you're not old enough. But it was the biggest company in the world at some point. We were working with those guys, and all the telcos, so the operators, the carriers, were making a ton of money by allowing you the privilege to send a text. And each text costs back then $1, right? And WhatsApp came along, and 55 guys, and I count 55, the day they sold to Facebook for $19 billion, 55 people were actually transacting more messages than SMS. So 55 people were able to completely wipe out one of the biggest cash cow for one of the largest industries in the world. 55 people. That's how technology goes fast. Same with Airbnb, same with Uber. The one thing that you have to remember is that for me, disruption, that world we hear all the time, is speed. Disruption is speed. You have to be fast, right? And by the way, guys, because I work on both sides, I work a lot with startups, I invest in startups, but I work with a lot of corporates as well. The problem with corporates is that they're not fast enough most of the time. Disruption is speed. But not only it gets faster, it actually gets smarter, like I hinted at earlier. Things are getting smarter. Robots are coming. The robots are coming. Supposedly, Terminator is going to knock on your door and say, "Where is Sarah Connor?" Right? Right? This is what we are experiencing. Again, here, I don't think if you're seeing very well, but this is Kia in South Korea. Robots are already here. It's not something completely new. I visited lately a BMW in Munich. If you have a BMW Series 200 or Series 400, this is where they are actually being built. 1,000 a day is very impressive. If you can actually visit that factory, it's open for the public, you should do it. You have robots there. They used to be German, they've been bought by the Chinese now. You have robots there that you see engineers sitting next to the robot, doing a gesture on the car, and the robot sees the engineer doing the gesture, imitates, and then iterates, and then become even better than the human being. The robots have already been here. It's not something that is completely new because it's the headline grabbing. So everything gets faster, automation gets faster, insights gets faster. I travel a lot. I travel 200 to 300,000 miles a year. I'm very lucky for that. I used to have to plan everything. I don't have to plan anything anymore. I show up at Naya the other day. I boot up my phone and say, okay, what do I do next? Okay, do I use a Grab? I use Grab. I don't need to plan. We have all these insights available to us super fast. That's changing. I work a lot with travel, a lot with airlines and airports. That's changing completely the way people are thinking about business models. Because if people want everything at the instant, there are very different ways to attract the consumer than if it's planned in advance. So faster insights, faster networks. By networks, I don't mean 4G. But by the way, guys, I was in Puerto Galera last year, and Puerto Galera has faster 4G than I have in central London. So good on you guys. So it's not that. It's the fact that my entire business model, my company, I have people all around the world working for me, would have not been possible only 10 years ago. My company is a pure network company. Since I have clients all over the world, there's no way for me. I mean, I could obviously open subsidiaries everywhere and have proper offices. No, I use flexible workspaces with people that work for me for 6 to 3 years, depending on the size of the projects. This is something that also is very key for countries like the Philippines, for emerging countries, because you have the talent, you have cheap labor, you can actually go in super fast, help grow products, because that's what I do. I grow products and services for other companies, and maybe even change afterwards. Maybe not stay on the project. These are stuff that can be done from here. Faster reality. My father was a surgeon. He actually was one of the pioneers in VR. But now you can see I work, for instance, with Airbus. You know, the plane manufacturers. You've probably flown an Airbus in your lifetime. Now they don't train people anymore directly on planes. They train them with virtual headsets because it's cheaper to at first learn on virtual headsets and then only later go and actually learn directly on aircrafts. Faster intelligence, I'm going to come a little bit. I think that the term artificial intelligence is a little bit, pardon my French, bullshit, because it's still not there yet, because a lot of it is simply algorithms. But the simple fact, if you have an iPhone or an Android and you put a calendar invite in your calendar and with a location and it tells you, hey, Paul, you should be actually going now because otherwise you're going to miss the start of the conference, which in Manila is about 3 hours of traffic, obviously.
This is already a sign of artificial intelligence. It's using simply lots of data points, in that case, geolocation, traffic information, to actually remind you to come at your appointment in time. This is something that works, for instance, very well in London. But it's already artificial intelligence, but let's not overstate what artificial intelligence is. No time for me to talk about that today, but really, this is also something that is going super faster. This is what we do. We, as human beings, we've always automated stuff because we wanted to have our life getting easier. That's all we've done. This is our humanity. We are doing that. And this is what you guys, when you do a startup, are doing. Of course you want to make money. We all want to make money. But if it was as easy as simply investing in Bitcoin, it would not be working, right? So this is why we actually automate our world. Tech is absolutely everywhere, and this is why when you look at the 4 biggest companies in terms of market cap, only 10 years ago, they were all energy companies, and now they all are tech companies, because the impact of technology hits billions. One guy or one girl writes a line of code in San Francisco, and it hits you here in the Philippines. It's the first time ever that this scale is happening in our world. The value creation is software, the impact is billions of people. But the impact is actually even bigger than that, because that you already knew. First, there's an opportunity race. The West, I come from what we call the West, right, guys? You know, I was born in Switzerland. My father was Greek. My mother was Finland. I'm pure European. I've lived most of my life in the West. Of course, I've also, as I said, lived in Japan and in the Philippines here. The West is being disrupted. The West is being disrupted by you guys. The West is disrupted by emerging countries at a pace that the West hadn't seen coming. You know, for like 70 years, you were a white guy in the West. You were the king of the world. Anywhere you were going, that's why we had all these expats. And you know that very well. You live in the Philippines. You see still these expats, the losers back home, right? This is why, sorry guys, that's the truth. This is why, entitled bastards, right? This is why this is gone. These type of generations are going. I work in Nigeria, for instance, which is very similar, very fast-growing, emerging country. They don't need to have white guys coming, because now you find smart people absolutely everywhere. And that's something that the West, again in brackets, hasn't come to terms yet. And also the other thing is that the West is aging super fast. Japan included here. China will happen soon enough, which is also a very big opportunity, because there's very few business models made for the whole people. My father died a year and a half ago. He was 85. I could see the struggle of using technology, even though technology seems easy for us. So these are opportunities that are coming that actually are still unseen by technology. The new people race is also very important. There's 2.5 billion people, and you guys are included, 2.5 billion people entering the middle class in the next 10 years. There's 2.5 billion customers actually entering the work class. These guys are, and when I say guy, I'm gender neutral here, will be paying for access to services that we don't even know about. And including these 2.5 billion, you know what? 1 billion women. And for me, that's the most important statistic, because 85% of purchase decisions in households are made by women. Yeah, they tell us that we did, because, you know, yeah, Paul, you did yeah, right. No, the men, we don't do that. The women are taking decisions. So when women, which is happening now, are becoming financially independent, they can make their own decisions. Thus, it's changing completely the way, we're thinking about business models and opening new opportunities. I know the Philippines is a very matriarchal country, so you're probably more ready than other countries to understand that wave. How women are changing the world, we haven't seen it completely yet, but none of the business models existing were made for women. This is why I invest, about 60% of the founders I invest in are only female-led companies. Because they understand the world better. Our world is gone, guys. It's fine. Yeah, we still have a few years to go, and of course, we'll drag on. This is the world of tomorrow, the world of women. Yeah, you can applaud that, women, if you want. The other thing that is really important is that we're seeing the biggest wealth, and that's very important for you guys, startups, the biggest wealth transfer ever in the history of mankind. Why? The parents, your parents or grandparents, my parents, all these people that built this world after the Second World War Well, they're either retiring or dying. So what's happening when that happens? The money is transferred to the younger generation. And when you have a younger generation, they have different ideas. And when they have different ideas, what do they want to do? They don't want to create a boring bank. I mean, some of them will buy Lamborghinis and Ferraris and still have fun. But most of them, I see that every day, want to actually work with startups, want to actually change the world. So this is another factor that is very important. And the last one, you knew it. There's a new downtown race, the downtown, and I call it Downtown Asia. 5 billion people are located around you guys. This is a new downtown. It's not London. I love London. It's not the US. You are right in the perfect place in the world for the next 100 years. This is where all the growth will come. This is where, again, I said earlier, these 2.5 billion people emerging will be. Africa will come slightly later. But this is what the biggest opportunity. You are right in the perfect spot to leverage that. When I said earlier that we're experiencing a global race, it's also a global race to better, easier experiences. Think about, Grab. You might not like Grab, sometimes they suck, whatever. But you know what? Being able to press a button and get a cab or get a car even simply in Makati compared to 10 years ago, has changed my life fully. It's silly, but it changes the way we're behaving. This is where startups are winning as well. It's not about only offering new business models and new ideas. It's about making this life so much easier. There's so much reason why all these guys that we keep talking about in all conferences, the Ubers and the Airbnbs, have been successful is because they give you a super easy experience to do one thing that seemed super hard to do before. That's the only reason. That's why they are so successful. You didn't know you love that, and suddenly you love it and you cannot live without it. This is where the success comes from. Everybody wants speed, and every successful company provides speed. And you know what? When I hear marketers, and I'm sure there's a lot of marketers around in this room talking about boomers and Gen X and millennials. And first of all, the guy who invented Gen X was a bit stupid because we're running out of letters because now we're Gen Y and Gen Z and we don't know what to call the next one. But also, simply guys, it's very American-centric. Are you a boomer or a Gen X where you were born in China before 1990 or simply in Eastern Europe? No way. And you know what? That speed, that wanting to have easy experiences with the services that startups provide, all this is actually already, doesn't matter which age you are, you're getting hooked to it. You have an easy experience with something. If you're 55 or if you're 15, you're gonna want it, you're never gonna want to let it go. This is happening, and this is why, you know what? I define that as we all are CEOs. We are all becoming CEOs. Why? Because we're getting offered stuff. We don't have the pay grade. That's the only problem, obviously, right? Because a CEO, we wish we had the pay grade. But you know what a CEO has or had? Access, knowledge, easy experience. Everything he wanted, he got it. I want to have a car now. Well, I'm going to ask my PA to do it. We have Grab. I want to go somewhere and I want to have a loft in New York where we have Airbnb. That makes us actually CEOs, all of us. Again, without the pay grade. We can have email the way that the CEOs were doing it. We can have, even the sleep, the way they had very expensive doctors to tell them to sleep. I can use your phone now to analyze your sleep. You could have health. They had access to better health care. Again, here, bear with me with the analogy, but you can have, like a fitness tracker that gives you access to your health data and you know better ski as well. This is an actual app that teaches you how to ski. CEOs had access to actually very expensive people to teach them how to do sports. Well, we have apps to do that. Travel, all these things, shopping, all these things, we have the same access that these guys have, these guys had. This is the biggest change for consumer behavior that we've never seen because we all feel in absolute control. We all see stuff in absolute control. This creates a new generation, this is where you have to pay attention, of types of consumers. Consumers are nomadic, the youth. What does that mean? It means I hate the term digital nomad. So do not use that term. Why? Because digital nomad is the new term for calling an expat. Because it's great to be a digital nomad when you have a passport like me that allows me to go to 175 countries without a visa, right? If you don't, if you have a Filipino passport, it's much harder to decide to move around super easily, right? So let's forget about the term digital nomad. But everybody once have the opportunity to travel and see something else. We all did, all the generations behind did. Everybody who was 20 wants to travel. The big difference is now you can. We have low-cost travel, low-cost airlines, etc. You actually can. This is the one of the things that actually matters now to the new generation, that matters to the new consumer. They want to have this aspiration of being always nomadic. The second one is tribal. We all are tribes. Filipinos are a tribe, maybe people in this room are a tribe, startup entrepreneurs are a tribe. You meet people that are like-minded, that you believe, that you share stuff. Well, when I was a kid at school, I was bullied because, and don't worry, it turned out fine, because I didn't have the same interest that the other guys and the other girls in the classroom. The difference is the same kid today, the same Paul, I'm 42, so I'm a bit old, but the same Paul today would actually been able to find someone online who actually shares the same interest, that would have validated what I liked, and I would have been able to actually go on with his interests without being felt completely awkward. That's something that's super important because that creates the biggest headache for politicians, for marketers, because before it was very easy to define someone as, 18 to 24 and wants this. Now it's impossible because when you are born, you have, of course, your financial situations, etc., but your tastes are not defined as a group. You could be alone, 5 people in the world liking something, you are as a group. It is super difficult for companies to work with. Tribal, we all want to work in tribes, and we find our tribes all around the world. And the last one is singular. If you're a parent, what do you tell your kids? And if you're a kid, well, you will understand what your parents told you. You can be whoever you want to be. That's what you say to your kids. You can be whoever you want to be, right? Well, it's the first generation ever that can actually do it. Because if you have access to all this technology, if you have access to the knowledge, if you have access to all this that I've just mentioned, you can actually do it. And this is why we're seeing so many entrepreneurs. Because you can actually do it. Of course, entrepreneurs are also born out of sometimes necessity, including, especially in emerging markets. But this is why it's so important now. Everybody wants to actually be an entrepreneur, and this is a big, big, big problem for corporates because they're lacking the talent. Because if you're someone smart, you're not going to go for a large corporation. If you're someone smart, you're going to work for I'm sorry for some people here working for corporates, by the way, by saying that, right? I'm not saying you're not smart. So, we consume like a CEO, we create stuff like CEOs because we're able to become entrepreneur. We want easier experiences. We want to have a sense of control. This is what all these services that we have around us actually give us. You can do stuff on our phone right now, and that gives us a sense of control. It's not fully there, but it gives us a sense of control that we never had before. And the one thing, it's magical. I don't know if you guys use Spotify. I know it's not available in the Philippines. Spotify is a music streaming business like Apple. It is! Oh, I'm sorry. Guys, see, I haven't been here. I've been living here for a while, so I'm really suck. Sorry for that. You can blame me later on. So, magical. They have this thing. They listen to everything you listen to. They understand what you like, and they offer you new music. And that new music is like, there's one playlist called Discover Weekly, for instance, that every Monday comes and shows you stuff that you might like, and it's honestly effing magical. You're like, holy shit, I like every single song on that playlist. But you know what is important here is that this shows that we are getting used to magical experiences. And if you don't have a magical experience, you're not gonna like it. And this bar, and that's the two things today, you either are a commodity or you are magic. Startups that win provide magic. All the rest is just a commodity. And you do not remember commodity. Do you know the brand of toilet paper you're using? No, you don't. Maybe one or two, they're very famous. That's why usually there's, at the end of the day, there's one powder that actually works because you don't actually remember. We live in a time where data is the key. We live in a time when, and that's what startups get, they can actually predict and understand your behavior. But also, they can actually make it scale. Data is how you scale. You know, do you love cats? I have 3 cats. Do you love cats? Nah, not really. Whatever. I know most people are dog people. But you know what cats do when they're a bit afraid? They become like bigger. This is what data does. You can be 2 people in the Philippines, but because you have data and you're on Amazon or Azure, you look like a super big shit company. People are like, oh wow, these guys are super massive because of data. This is why, again, WhatsApp, 55 people were able to disrupt, because data allows you to scale. And I know I'm almost out of time. Don't worry, guys. I'm seeing you there. I'm going to go faster. So data is how they won. Data is how you win. Because we are all actually, as human beings, very predictable. And it, of course, we've heard all the big scandals. It's also a lot of it is actually failures. But data is one of the most important things. And you know what that creates? It's an actual study from Harvard. I call that innovation inequality. You know what is income inequality? We hear that. Innovation inequality is basically the same idea applied to companies. You have some companies that find escape velocity, that are able to grow and understand how the world works, how to predict consumer behaviors, and these guys are growing, and all the rest are stagnating, and which means that they will die. I work with a lot of fintech companies, a lot of banks. Obviously, I'm based in London, and the same thing in New York. And when I see there's going to be probably 1 or 2 that will actually, in the retail bank system, 1 or 2 that will survive, the rest will fail. The rest will disappear. Because once you have, imagine 1 bank or 2 that provide you Spotify type of experiences, you're going to move there. And you're going to abandon the bank that you just, you don't like and you don't have any affinity with. This is going to happen with all the industries, innovation, inequality. That's all, I thought that was for me. And the last one, anything becomes a service. And I know it's not always a great thing, but anything becomes a service. I told you, with the cars, the people, you can hire anyone you want. So what happens when anything becomes a service? What happens especially for emerging countries? We live in commoditized environments, so everything is a commodity, as I told you. You can book an office space. I mean, there's a company here, Fly Spaces, in the Philippines. You can book an office space now for the next 3 hours. Do you need an office anymore? Large companies, and I'm not talking only startups, large companies are doing that. Anything becomes a service, that everything is actually becoming commoditized. And you guys are the biggest countries for BPOs, customer care here in the Philippines. Don't worry, I saw you. I know she's signing me that I should be wrapping up in the next 2 minutes. You know what? When you have care, this is every time I call Emirates, every time I call BA, I end up in the Philippines. It's always great because I recognize the accent. I say, "Oh, so where do you live?" And she will answer, "In London." I'm like, "No, you don't. You're not in London. That's what your boss told you to say, but you're not in London. Come on, where are you?" And then we actually have this conversation. It's super fun. But you know what? When you have this, is the sound on? Let's see. Probably you know about this. That's Google.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Mm-hmm. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
I'm going to quote it here, but you know what? The first voice is a robot. So why do I need to hire someone in the Philippines if a robot can do that? I'm sorry, but why should I do it? I'm not saying it's ethical, but it will change the dynamics in emerging countries as well. Because suddenly, if actually voice control can be as good as that, why would I hire someone? The barrier of what is a commodity and what is magical becomes even higher and higher and higher. So how do you differentiate in emerging countries? Well, first of all, you have the advantage of having still, and I'm sorry, it's a reality, cheap labor. And for a long time still, I believe, because I said earlier that AI is not here yet, for a long time, cheap labor will beat AI. Cheap labor will beat these bots, which means that the Philippines, for the next 15 years, you can still have this battle and win it. What you should do, though, is once you do that, the startups that actually are onboarding this kind of stuff, it's upskill your workers to being able to actually keep on the fight in 15 to 20 years when actually AI becomes actually that good. Because this is just only the beginning. The second thing, you have the most beautiful country on earth, guys. What do entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs want? They want to live in somewhere where it's cheap, where there's a lot of sun, okay, it rains sometimes here, and great food and great beaches. Why is Bali so freaking successful but not you guys? Right? I don't know, you tell me. Why is Bali so successful but not you guys? The most successful place, right now in Europe for startup entrepreneurs that want to start the companies is actually Athens. Why? Because it was a crisis and it's super fucking cheap, right? So this is also an advantage you have in the Philippines. People come here and could come here to actually being the destination when the talent is being actually exchanged. When you have guys and girls coming here and pollinating with you guys to actually make even better talent. The last is downtown. You are actually, as I said earlier, right in the middle of the future by being here in Southeast Asia, and especially here in the Philippines, because you have the advantage of speaking English perfectly. You are in the perfect environment. And again, data, you can be like cats and growing. You have, however, as startups here, entrepreneurs in the Philippines, and that's the biggest curse of emerging market, you have to think global from day one. You have to be Filipinos, but you have to think global. Average is over. If you're an average person, it's over. If you're an average startup, it's over. You have to be magical. Average is absolutely over today. Your workforce needs to be augmented, and you have to think about how you're going to be global from day one. To design your entire startup and your entire ideas for what it is to be global. Don't be just Filipinos. I adore the Philippines, but don't be just Filipinos. As an investor, I'm not going to invest if you only, no matter how big the country is, no matter how big the opportunity is, you have to become a very, very big company from the get-go. Okay, because I'm running out of time, I'm going to go fast with these ones. To finish with one thing here, is that I talked about all the technology, but there's one thing that you saw saying here. You are in the Philippines and all the countries around here, by definition, you're very proud of your countries, right? You're very, and that, I mean, the simple fact that you guys had the national anthem at the beginning, it's actually a force that you should actually use. Because no matter the technology, as human beings, and I do that when I work with all the companies I work with, what we connect with is a human emotion. When my father was dying in his last few years, the only thing he was talking about was not his career, was not the great things he's done. It was family, friends, times past, holidays, memories like that. We are built on memories. We're built on values, and we're built on the journeys and experiences we've actually been together. This myth I was talking about. You have to find your fire as a startup, as a company, as a country. You have to find that story that makes you likable, that makes you adorable, that makes you want me to connect with you. All the big companies that have been successful have created a fire like that. You have to find this magic, not only in the technology you provide, but actually in the experience you want to provide me with. You have to decide who you are. That's the only question that matters. For all of those who are going to try to pitch me, you have to tell me who are you right now. If you ask that question to Siri or Cortana, whatever, because I don't care which technology you're using, or Hey Google, she or he will not understand, depending on the settings. He will say, I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about. If you're a mother, if you're a father, if you're an innovator, if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're a good traveler, the one thing you know how to do is to go into unknown territories. When you build the first startup, and when I built my first startup, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was doing it. When you have your first kid, you don't know what you're doing. Of course, you have your mother and father, grandmother, grandfather helping, but you don't know what you're doing. That's exactly what it feels like to be an entrepreneur. That's exactly what it is. You have not to be afraid of new environments. You have to jump. That's going to be my last slide. I didn't know how to make that one, so I flew to Macau, which is the highest point you can legally jump from, and I jumped. This is exactly how it feels like to be an entrepreneur. You just go on the ledge, and you actually do jump. There you go, 1, 2, hop, and I jump. This is exactly what it feels like every time I build a company. This is exactly what it actually should feel like if you're building a company, whether it's in the Philippines or elsewhere. It should feel like that. Don't worry, there's a cord at some point that will save you. You're not gonna die, but you should actually jump. And the biggest advice I'm gonna give you when you do that is, you know, it's not about failure or not failing, it's shame. You know when you're a kid and you stumble on the playground of your school, the problem is not that you fell. The problem is that other kids were looking at you and you feel ashamed. If you're a good entrepreneur, you shouldn't give a fuck about that. You say, I don't care. I'm going to fall in front of everyone. That's the most important thing. And on that, guys, who do you want to be? Be magic. I'm Paul. Sorry I was too long. Thank you so much, guys.
And thank you so much, Mr. Paul Papadimitriou.
Thank you very much, Paul.
If you don't mind, if you can join us on stage just for a couple of questions over here as we set up the next presentation. Again, a lot to learn from the presentation on disruption from the West. Disruption, of course, from the women entrepreneurs coming to the workforce. And of course, disruption by wealth transfer as well. And the biggest thing I learned living here in the Philippines with our workforce advantage is that, to quote you, everything is super fucking cheap. So again, thank you so much for that one, Paul. Right now, we'd like to leave the floor open to a few questions from our guests. So please, there are a couple of mics over there, and Paul doesn't have much time. Please state your name, where you're from, and please ask Paul your question.
Do you want my microphone, guys?
Okay. All right, well, first of all, thanks, Paul, for a wonderful speech. I'm Rick File from Seattle. And you hit on a lot of points today that I had questions about with artificial intelligence. And considering the economy of the Philippines and how strong it is with the BPO industry, I started realizing with artificial intelligence, I kind of think it might be a little bit closer than 15 years out. And so I started looking at it from a macroeconomic perspective, like what's going to happen to all the employees here, and what should they start doing to update their skills, and what should they be looking at?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm going to be short because I know we're running out of time. We're a bit late. So yeah, the Philippines, so he says that he believes that this wave of, let's call them robots, automation replacing workers here in the Philippines could be faster than 15 years. The reason I don't believe so is that as long as it's still expensive to run these things. What is going to happen, for instance, now I was flying with whichever airline, doesn't matter. I was flying with them, and I was calling them, and I realized that the first 3 questions were actually answered by such a bot, and that's just why it's going to happen. Because more often than not, for instance, when you call an airline, you have the 5 sets of questions are always the same. Why is my plane delayed? Where is my plane? What is my gate? Et cetera, et cetera. So these will be replaced first. For more complex questions, I don't believe this will happen. What should they do? Well, of course, it's easy to say you should upskill, you know, the people here. I still believe, for instance, there's been an article the other day about AI. So you know, for instance, you give access to your Gmail to have understanding of what happens on your email, right? It actually, and they tell you, well, we use very clever algorithms to understand who you're talking to and your contacts. Well, you know what? Most of these companies are actually using people in the Philippines to actually read your email. There's no robot. There's actually people in the Philippines actually reading your email and actually trying to make sense. No, it's true. It's actually true. Meaning, what we think that is going to hit us so quickly, I don't think it will that quickly because simply, again, the simple price. But you're right. At some point, that won't be enough. And the only way to do that is to upskill people. And by the way, the only way you upskill people, and that's why cities are so powerful, big cities, like Manila could be, is you have to attract foreign talent. Not because they're better than you, they're not, but because you want them, like maybe like you, to come here from Seattle, working with local people. And this is where you get actual, you know, I'm sorry to compare that with a virus, but there's a concept called interlinearity. It means when I cough and we're all in a big city, the virus is going to spread super quickly. Well, the same applies for intelligence. The same applies for IDs. This is why London, New York, Hong Kong, these places are continue to have a very fast pace in terms of IDs, is because people coalesce together. This is what you need to create in Manila and Cebu and other places.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks so much, Paul, for coughing on all of us here today. A round of applause, please, for Mr. Paul Papadimitriou. Again, Paul, will you be around for people to speak to you later on? Paul, will you be around here for people to speak to you later on if they want to talk to you?
I'll be here all day. You can find me. I'm probably one of the tallest guys, and I have the convertible model as well, so it's easy to spot me.
Again, Paul, thanks so much. And if you've got insights or you want to share what you've learned from Paul here today, please upload that online, again, using our hashtag IgnitePH2018.